Okay, so today on the channel, we're going to be tasting some Port Charlotte Heavily Peated PAC 01. This is a variation on the Port Charlotte Heavily Peated. There is a series of these variations called the Cask Exploration Series, and this is one of them. And I'm going to open it up. On the channel, we don't talk a lot about packaging. It's not the bottle, it's the liquid, but for what it's worth, having it out on the table, this is a pretty impressive bottle. It's very heavy. It seems to weigh what a normal bottle and another half a bottle might weigh. It's a thick glass bottle. It's got sort of embossed raised lettering on the back. Has this sort of apothecary sort of shape and style. It is pretty impressive when you pull it out, and it certainly does not need a tin to sell it from the shelf in the shop. And that's enough about packaging. Let's talk about what's in this bottle. What are we dealing with here? So basically this is a variation on the normal Port Charlotte. The core range has the Islay Barley, has the 10-year. There's a series of these variations. This is one of them that basically involve using different combinations and maybe exotic casks for finishing. So in this case, we've got a cask strength 56.1% whiskey. It has been aged 8 years per the label and the packaging. It doesn't quite add up because it says it's been distilled in 2011, and if you check out the bottling code at the bottom on the back of your bottle, it will tell you when it was bottled, and this one was bottled in February the 25th, 2021. And so there's some discrepancy here. I'm going to trust the lower age statement that's being represented by the distiller. And what we have here is slightly complicated because they basically say they have two parcels that go into the vatting. And so they're aged slightly different. So parcel 1 is 6 years first fill ex-bourbon casks. Then it's 2 years first fill Pauillac red wine casks. The second parcel is 7 years first fill bourbon, and then 1 year second fill Pauillac casks. Does any of this make any impression on us in terms of what to expect in a vacuum? Not really. So let's talk about the 10-year that we're used to. The 10-year is only a 50% only, but it's slightly lower proof, and that one is 65% first fill bourbon casks. There's 10% second fill, and then there's about 25% wine casks, second fill. And so that's what we normally expect as the baseline. So these are not just wine casks, not just French wine casks, but we have these very specifically identified Pauillac wine casks that they seem to be very, very proud of because they've given us this very, very precise ratio and breakdown. It's cask strength, but you're just not getting a big nose full of alcohol on it. It's full of flavor. There's no sort of waiting through those first couple of draws for the sort of alcohol burn to go away. I mean, there's some of it there, but first thing you're going to be aware of is you have that smoky peat, but it's not raging campfire smoke. It's not. It's more like smoke that's kind of collected, that's still hanging in the air. It's thick enough, but it's not coming at you. It's kind of surrounding and enveloping everything. And you really take a nice long draw on it, and you're getting a sort of I would say almost chilly kind of sea breeze. There's salts there, which we definitely expect. And before I get to the sort of sweeter, fruitier elements, there's another component here, and it's like a cedar, it's a woody. It's woody, but it's not the normal sort of standard oak that you get from the bourbon cask. It has that sort of flavor to it, a little bit dustier, powderier, like sawdust. Now the fruit I'm getting first is sort of a very sort of mild orange citrus, and I'm getting a lot of vanilla. We expect that from those bourbon casks, and it's, you know, vanilla cream, creamy vanilla. And there's a hint of more of a red fruit, a berry, a cherry. And all the way down at the bottom, all the way down, you're getting past that layer of the fruit and the sweet. It's like this dusty kind of library, like just kind of old, a little bit of that pleasant sort of leather sort of sofa, like kind of it's slightly fainty, kind of leathery, and in a very pleasant way, very balanced. And if you go far enough, you get like it's like a pine needle, but not like a sappy or anything, like a kind of old. It's like old pine, not pine sol, not pine flavor or cleaner or anything like that. So that is to say, plenty of complexity here on the nose, and a lot to pick apart here other than just smoke, peat. Okay, so we've got, this is a very rich. This is there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot going on, and it's the first thing is the peat you're getting. It's more of a, it's like an ashier now. On the palate, and that orange is still there, but it's almost like orange peel now. There's a little bit of bitterness coming through, probably from the wood. There's that vanilla is running straight through. It's foundational. It runs through the whole thing. When you roll it around, you're getting cherry, maybe like black cherry, like slightly, not tart, but just slightly less saccharine sweet. Not sour at all, but you know, like, or raspberry, something like that, that isn't like super sweet. It really fits it well. It's really all well. It's well balanced. It's very well matched. With that bitter, slightly bitter from that citrus, it kind of transitions into almost like a dark chocolate as it sits. The finish is great, and it is just really pleasant, with that sort of not too sweet. It's all sort of tempered. You got a little bit of that sort of bitter, sort of tannic wood on the middle of the palate, and you've got a nice full, round, sort of sweet kind of vanilla around it, sort of wrapped around it. So there's just enough to sort of cut it, so it's not too sweet. And you're kind of left with that really pleasant kind of that ashy kind of smoke. It's on your tongue, and it leaves in the sinuses. And so the last bit, it's got a very nice warming kind of in the chest, and really nice, like that trace of that not too sweet orange, that vanilla, and that nice ash kind of smoke that's left kind of in the back and in the sinus. It's a pretty fantastic ride. It's a very well balanced whiskey. I just threw out a lot of sort of notes, and none of them clash. This is not a whiskey that we sometimes see. Here's a whiskey for whatever reason, just to create a variation, or maybe we've got some second fill, bourbon whiskey. We want to dress it up, whatever, and let's dump it in an exotic wine cask and see what happens. And this is not that. This thing, I went kind of methodically through the parcels and everything at the beginning, because this has been very, very meticulously crafted and calibrated. It's fantastic. How does it compare to the 10-year? The 10-year is older, obviously. This is a younger, by its own age statement, whiskey. It doesn't feel young. It just feels like a different version. So when I think of the 10-year Port Charlotte, there's citrus. I think of lemon, some tropical fruit, some pineapple, maybe even in banana, like that kind of, but sort of a bright citrus and a tropical citrus, along with sweet, with like honey butterscotch from the sort of bourbon cask kind of notes that we would expect. So in this case, this is kind of like it's kind of like the alternate kind of night version of the 10-year Port Charlotte. The citrus is still here, but instead of that sort of lemon, it's now kind of orange, and it's got this sort of nice balancing note of just a little not too sweet with it. I'm getting more vanilla, then I'm getting the sort of sweeter sweet honey and the type of stuff that I expect from the 10-year. And it's kind of like if your favorite band kind of went through a period where they did their sort of dark, techno record, and they're touring the hits, they're playing the hits, but it's a new arrangement. It's the same song, it still kills, but it's got a different edge to it. And that's what this is. It's the 10-year, 2 years younger, doesn't feel rough or anything like that. It is with a higher cask strength, and I think that kind of helps, but it delivers a lot of the same experience with in a slightly different key, and I think it is pretty fantastic. Especially, you are not going to be put off by this if you are into any of the Port Charlotte. So we've got a cask strength whiskey. A lot of us are going to experience this whiskey with some water, so we're going to hit it with a little water. It doesn't need the water. It is a surprisingly drinkable, very sippable. I mean, it's got the smoke from the Islay, but in terms of the ABV, it's not a problem. You could sit and sip this all day. But I would give it, 3 really good little drops here to see what happens. And especially with a cask strength whiskey like this, where a lot of people are going to hit it with a little bit of water. And so, volume of the peat, of the smoke, turned down immediately once the water hits it. So if you are into that flavor, but only so far, adding the water is not a bad idea. Yet I'm just getting so much of the vanilla. I'm getting the citrus. It's not quite as orangey now. I'm getting the vanilla almost bordering on a sort of chocolate sweet vibe. Not sickly sweet, but it seems like it's a little bit sweeter. Yeah, now you get a nice. Now it's sort of sitting. Now you're getting that orange is coming back up to the surface, and it's even sweeter than it was before. So I would say slightly sweeter. It's all still here though. It's not watered. Sometimes you hit that whiskey with the water, and several of the notes just drop out. And this is not simplified. It hasn't sort of muddled together at all. Pretty similar experience, to be honest. The smoke's there. It feels more smokier and less ashier, and I feel like, again, a little bit stickier in terms of sweetness. That sort of vanilla kind of roundness that I was describing before is more prominent. It's more to the forefront. Yeah, and that sort of dark fruit. The vanilla and that type has gotten a little bit sweeter. The sort of red fruit feels a little darker. All in all, it's still really well balanced. Everything is still here, still accounted for. This is not a whiskey that's going to be ruined by the water. Green light to add a little water to this one, just to sip it. It's going to go down even smoother. It certainly hasn't taken away any of the impact. I'm still getting that nice pleasant sort of warming sort of in the chest from sipping it, even with the water. And the finish is still there. It's still staying with me. I don't quite have as much of the smoke kind of in the sinus, kind of in the back of the palate like you get when you have it neat. This is just kind of choose your preference here. The last thing we got to talk about is the price of this bottle. And the thing about this bottle is that it is 2 years younger than the 10-year, which you can usually kind of find for $70, $75. And it's a $130 to $150 bottle. And so it's not quite, but it's close to twice the cost of the 10-year, which is already a fantastic bottle. And I am so glad I have this, and I'm so glad to have enjoyed it and tasted it. And I'm going to enjoy every dram out of this bottle, and without any complaints. It's certainly rich enough and complex enough, and sort of specialized enough to command a premium price. The problem is that the 10-year is so good, and it's not twice as good as the 10-year. It's not. It's sort of an alternate take. Like I said, it's this approach in a different key, and it's 2 years younger. It's a lot to pay for an 8-year whiskey with a sort of sister whiskey that's already so good. But I can't in a vacuum say anything negative really about this whiskey. It's pretty fantastic, and it doesn't go too far on any sort of single note. Nothing's out of place. It's really a worthwhile whiskey. Bruichladdich is kind of killing it right now, especially with these Port Charlottes, and I'm going to say 4.5 glasses just because of the price compared to the 10-year. If you are interested in a little bit more information and where the price points hit and everything for the other whiskeys in the Port Charlotte line, check out my video that I did. There's a gift guide for all price levels, $50 to $500. There's 2 Port Charlottes I talk about in the same price range that I've touched on here today. Check it out, it's right here.